Hello, welcome to North Star Oasis. I'm your host, Jeff Williams. We're here for another action-packed episode of your favorite public affairs programming in the fastest hour on television. Thank you for joining us today. Just a reminder, if you are a regular viewer or notice if you're a first-time visitor or viewer, all of our episodes are available on either YouTube or Facebook, facebook.com/NorthStarOasis, youtube.com/NorthStarOasis. We're going to begin today talking about something that everybody else is talking about, but we're going to have a little bit different take on it. And that, of course, is the gun control debate. We've actually, in the last couple of years that we've had this program, this is one issue we've really skirted. We've never really gone in depth on gun control, on the gun control debate. So we're going to actually start that conversation today. Of course, I say, conversation in air quotes because everybody wants to have a conversation about something, but the conversation always comes out to be a monologue. Well, the fact that we don't have a guest on the show today and that we're taping and we're not live anymore, this is going to be a monologue. But we're going to try to keep it interesting for you. Anyhow, we're going to ask the very important question, is gun ownership a right? That's our Prager University segment for today.
Does an American citizen have a constitutional right to own a gun? Here's what the Second Amendment says. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. Now, it once seemed to me like that language only protected state militias and not individuals. Indeed, this is the view held by the 4 dissenting Supreme Court justices in the 2008 case of District of Columbia versus Heller, a landmark case dealing with gun ownership. But the more research I did, the more I came to realize that my initial view was mistaken, and that the founders were in fact securing an individual right. The 5 justices who voted to affirm the right to own a gun in D.C. versus Heller had indeed made the correct decision. Let's look at the amendment one more time. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. We first need to focus on the phrase, the right of the people. Note that the people are the only ones whose right is secured here, not the militia or a state government. This phrase, the right of the people, comes up a few times in the Constitution. For example, the First Amendment refers to the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government. And the Fourth Amendment secures the right of the people to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures. Why then, if the authors of the Constitution felt so strongly about the right of the people to own guns, did they include language about a well-regulated militia? These opening words of the amendment might be called a justification clause. Such clauses are used to help explain why a right is being secured. But it's the operative clause that explains what right is being secured. In this case, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And what was the word militia understood to mean at the time? Well, the Militia Act of 1792 defined militia to mean all white males 18 to 45. Today, of course, militia would include women and people of all races, but it was clearly not a reference to a small National Guard type group. And what about the part of the amendment that says a militia is necessary to the security of a free state? What the opponents of personal gun ownership ask, does a personal right of gun ownership have to do with that? Again, historical context is key. In the 1790s, the phrase free state wasn't used to mean an individual state like New York or Rhode Island. Rather, it meant what we'd call today a free country, a nation free of despotism. A free state is what the framers wanted America to be. They saw an armed citizenry as in part a hedge against tyranny. Citizens who own weapons can protect themselves, prevent tyrants from seizing power, and protect the nation from foreign enemies. This does not mean, though, that this right is unlimited. Free speech, for example, has long been subject to some narrow and reasonable regulations. But severe restrictions on owning a gun, like severe restrictions on free speech, would violate the Second Amendment as the founders understood it. Maybe you think this understanding of the Second Amendment is outdated today, that the Constitution needs to change as public attitudes change. The founders included a provision for doing just that. If the public attitude really has changed, the Constitution can be amended to reflect that change. But ironically, even if we focus on current public attitudes, the case for individual gun ownership is as strong as ever. Polls consistently show that over 2/3 of Americans believe that the Second Amendment secures the right of citizens to own a gun. And Congress and state governments have repeatedly reaffirmed this view, including in recent decades. So, does the Second Amendment secure an individual right to bear arms? It did when it was written, it has throughout American history, and it does today. I'm Eugene Volokh, professor of law at UCLA for Prager University.
So there is a little bit of a primer on the Second Amendment. And I bring this up because it comes back into the debate. It's being debated again. Want to point out something that it was actually brought up to me last week about this. A progressive, left-wing, liberal Democrat acquaintance of mine. Won't even say he's a friend, but this is a person who is a friend of a friend. Had commented that the Second Amendment is antiquated and it's outdated. And I shot back, this is on Facebook, I shot back if his feelings and thoughts about the First Amendment matched that of the Second Amendment. He brought on the fact that, the gun lobby spends so much money, and so the Second Amendment is no longer what it used to be because of increase in the gun lobby. And then I brought back about the telecommunications lobby and including Google and Microsoft and computer technologies, and how much they lobby Congress for their rights to interpret the First Amendment. So therefore, if you're going to use the Second Amendment being old and outdated because of the gun manufacturers and the NRA, could you not also state that the First Amendment would be just as outdated as, with the likes of Google and Amazon and Microsoft and Verizon? And he didn't get the fact that I was not debating the issue, I was debating the logic, and it completely escaped him. And the fact is that our founding fathers put in the Second Amendment for a reason. And even if technology changes, and yes, there are some, as was just explained, there are some legitimate restrictions that can be placed upon the Second Amendment, as there is the First. That's probably not not in dispute. I say that because 1986 was a ban on fully automatic weapons. It's been in place since 1986. Well, what happened October 1st? We are going to show you some video. The video we are showing you it's not going to be graphic from a visual perspective, but the language, because we're dealing with real life events and the tragedy that happened in Las Vegas, the audio is going to have something. We just didn't have time to edit all the Effenheimers and some of the swears, so I'm going to warn you that the videos that we're about to show you might be a little bit of a sensitive nature. Let's just put it that way. So bear with us. We're going to show you first a taxi driver's perspective of what happened, because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 4 videos that are actually going to show the scenes during the shooting. But the first one is actually closest to the building, and this is a taxi driver who was at the Mandalay Bay and picked it up on the iPhone cam. And also pay attention to the radio chatter that was going on with dispatch, because that's also going to be key as far as what happened here. So let's take a look at what happened with that taxi cab driver at the Mandalay Bay. And I want you to know that this happened in real time, so what we're showing you is the entire sequence as best we can. We didn't slice and dice and edit this. This is what was happening on October 1st at the Mandalay Bay in the entire run.
now it sounds like it's coming from farther away. Something's going on. I'm not sure why people aren't running, but there's a security guard. What is he doing? You know, for there being gunfire, sure doesn't seem like people are running. Oh, shit. Seriously? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of cops out here. Be careful.
Where are the cops at? I'm right here by the porch at Mandalay Bay, and everything just seems to be normal here.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and everything seems normal when it's not. The million cameras around the Vegas.
Yeah, we're just all sitting. We're just...
I got details on it. I'm at the airport. I just talked to the Metro Police over here at the airport. They said do not go to Mandalay Bay. There's multiple shots fired and they need lots of medical there. Do not go to Mandalay Bay. Stay away from there.
Alright, I'm leaving. This is ridiculous. I don't know why people aren't leaving. This is insane. Everybody's just standing around. It doesn't seem like anybody's moving. It seems like it's coming.
What happened, Mandalay Bay driver? What happened? Full shots fired. They don't even know the details yet. I just talked to Metro over here at the airport. They're
There's
still
just
getting the
people
details,
standing
but
around.
there's multiple
You
injuries.
guys, there's
and,
a shots fired.
That's all they're telling me. They're not telling me anything other than that. They just said stay away from there. They're shutting the whole place down.
Alright, this is crazy. I don't know. It seems like it's coming from up there. Oh shit, Alright, I'm out of here.
Too, so just stay away from there.
So that was the first angle in which we were showing you. We wanted to make sure that you saw the full thing. This is how it was up close to the Mandalay Bay.
Alright, all the...
Because now, of course, we're
all the
starting to get
taxi
all the
drivers are gone
conspiracy
now.
theories out about this angle, that angle, but we wanted to show you at least so you could hear up close and personal, what did it sound like at the Mandalay Bay? There were a lot of short bursts with a lot of longer pauses. Then would be another short burst with a longer pause. That's the way it went for the entire duration of that shooting, which lasted somewhere between 7 and 10 minutes. I don't even have the timeline on that, not that I've really looked. There were some people who were saying, oh, it was constant fire for 70 minutes. That's not the case. And I remember I was actually on the computer at the time and online, and I was getting all of the different updates in my Facebook timeline showing what was going on, and there were like 5 other hotel and casinos that were mentioned, and so I ended up listening to the police scanners that night, real time as it was happening. And so your initial, anytime we get into a situation with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of moving pieces, there's a lot of confusion going on at first. And there's no doubt that that was happening on October 1st in Las Vegas. But once you get a chance to assess the situation, you make your decisions, then things start to flow. But that's also where, in that moment of indecision, a lot of the conspiracy theories start originating, because somebody will say something and then people grab that on as a gospel truth when it isn't. But for the sake of this show, there was the taxi cab driver's video from the Mandalay Bay. Now, let's take a look at what it was like at the concert. This is where people were getting shot. Again, shocking video, even though we're a more desensitized nation now. Some of the language might be a little raw, but I will tell you that you don't actually see people getting shot, so it's not quite that graphic. But let's take a look.
Everybody stay down. Stay down, stay down. Everybody stay down. Go. Gotta be, right? Yeah.
So that one, we've got feedback here. That one, we did edit that because it went on for like 18 minutes, and most of it was just people running away. But I wanted to show you what it looked like when the first shots were fired. And you see a little bit of the confusion, and you get the people who start running away. But the cameraman was kind of wondering, well, why is everybody running? And then you hear the first burst. Now, let's take a look at what happened on the stage with Jason Aldean when he first got word of what was going on.
Get fucking down! God damn! Cameraman is fucking running. God damn! Stay down. I'm still recording. No, I'm still recording.
You need to get down though.
I've heard he does. I want to go right where they're at.
Well, 1 hour before that scene, Big and Rich, country music artists, they actually were on the stage, and in that little area, they had led everybody into singing God Bless America, Las Vegas, Nevada. 1 hour before all of that started happening. The entire crowd was singing together. And then, of course, we saw what happened. Now, the Las Vegas police, of course, went into immediate action. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They had people on scene at the concert venue. They also had assault teams that were, once they assessed the situation, made their way into Mandalay Bay, and they ended up, well, the shooter actually killed himself before the police made it there. But we're going to show you, excuse me, we're going to show you some of the body cam footage released by the Las Vegas Police Department.
Hey, you guys, get down! Go that way! Get out of here! There's gunshots coming from over there! Go that way! Go that way! There's gunshots right here! That's fireworks! Gunshots! I can clear my head. Hey, go that way, go that way, go that way. Hey, they're shooting right at us, guys. Everybody stay down. Stay down. Where's it at? North of the Mandalay Bay. It's coming out of a window.
Hey, get behind cover! Sight. Hey, go back! Go back! Get back! Get back! Get back! Get back! Hey, I know you are. There's multiple people shot up there. I know. Get in there. Get in there.
We see muzzle flash from the Mandalay Bay. It's from Mandalay Bay. I can see in the room. Everybody get down, get down, get down, get down. That's right. Is that firecrackers? Let's get down, get down, get down! I got a vest on. Benny! Stay as close as possible. Where are you? Where are you? Go, go. This way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. Go, 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 go. That way, that way, that way, that way.
So that's what happened. Now, of course, what we can't show you, because we don't have video, and nobody has video that I'm aware of, is what happened inside the building. However, I will say that a Mandalay Bay worker who was caught in the initial hallway, this is according to Las Vegas Review-Journal, the maintenance worker caught in the initial hallway gunfire of Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock said he shut off the elevators in Mandalay Bay and helped to direct police to Paddock's room. Stephen Schuck said he was on a higher floor than Paddock and had come down to check a fire exit door that wouldn't open, according to an interview Schuck gave on the Today Show Wednesday morning. It's unclear if this is the same security guard Jesus Campos was investigating, the same door security guard Jesus Campos was investigating before Paddock shot Campos, or if this was the door that Paddock himself bolted shut. Schuck said that when he arrived on the 32nd floor, Campos yelled at him to take cover, and he hid in a doorway as rounds came down the hallway. Campos had been shot in the leg. Schuck said he used his radio to tell others about the shooting, as confirmed by audio recordings released by MGM Resorts International, the owner of the Mandalay Bay. The audio recordings do not indicate when Schuck sent a message about the shooting. Sheriff Joe Lombardo has said Paddock fired at the security guard at 9:59 p.m., and someone contacted 911 about the shooting at 10:05 p.m. in a statement Tuesday. MGM voiced concern about the accuracy of the sheriff's timeline without specifying the company's concerns. Schuck told Today that he later directed police officers to Paddock's room, shut down the elevators, and delivered a set of master keys to the police. Then there was a transcript here of 2 radio calls between the maintenance worker, Schuck, and the supervisor, which I'm not going to read other than showing that it's 10:16 p.m. and the police were on their way. Now, can you imagine if you're a police officer having to make your way up 32 flights of stairs? It takes a few minutes to get up through 32 flights of stairs, and even when I was in my best condition, 32 stairs would still take me a while, and I'd still be winded when I got there. But yet, in 6 to 10 minutes, Paddock, he killed himself, and that was the end of the shooting, but he took a terrible, terrible toll with him. So now, what about people who were there and on the receiving end of the gunshots? What did they have to say in the aftermath of all of this?
We knew something was wrong as soon as we heard the first shots.
I wasn't sure at the time if the shots were coming right at us or if they were on the street or not. I still really wasn't sure.
The first round of shots I heard I thought was fireworks, and I looked towards Mandalay Bay thinking I would see sparks pretty soon. Nothing happened.
He was targeting the crowd, and he wasn't aiming specifically at anyone. There really was no aiming that he could have done. He was just spraying.
I almost felt like there was a helicopter above us shooting. It was so bizarre, like a war sound. Something you've seen on TV.
A lot of people were just in sheer panic and didn't know where to go, and everybody was just kind of running with the crowd and running where everybody else was going, and they were running to the entrances and exits that we had initially came in when we first came to the concert.
I just wanted to get my wife and my unborn child out of there as fast as I could. I just know we hit the deck. After he stopped shooting, then he started shooting again, and I grabbed her hand and I said, "Let's go." That was it. We just kept our heads low and we made for an exit.
And found my way back into a restaurant area in the back of the restaurant, and found some office to go hide in. There was a girl that was shot in the arm, and she was freaking out, saying that she witnessed her mom get shot in the chest and just drop dead.
So she was very, very distraught, and she had been shot in the elbow, and she was just trying to get a hold of all of her family and talk to them and tell them what had happened.
The most accurate description I can think of is the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan on the D-Day beach. Just the bullets whistling past you, the cracks when it hits something metal, and then that's probably the most accurate description I can think of.
I appreciate life every single day. I know that tomorrow is not given, and try to make the best of it.
We shouldn't have to think about scary situations like this, and we shouldn't have to think about how we're going to save ourselves if need be, but it's important to do so. I think that played a big role in us getting out and staying safe.
Now, the guy brings up a very, very valid point, that was like the opening scene to Saving Private Ryan. I'll tell you this, I never thought, well, I can't say that. I can't say I've never thought. I've experienced gunfire similar to what we saw in Las Vegas back when I was in Iraq. That was commonplace over there. I think back in 03 and 04, if anybody was in Iraq, they pretty much experienced something similar to that. And so, as an Iraq War veteran who comes home, what do I see? I see the opportunity to do something like that all the time. Even in Las Vegas. I've been to Las Vegas a handful of times since my return. My parents used to live in Las Vegas. So, well, I'll tell you what. Let's we're going to watch the next video, Political Stalemate, and I'll come back to my thought in just a minute.
The stalemate between Democrats and Republicans on gun control is thrust back into the spotlight. For Democrats, the time for words is over.
So thoughts and prayers are not enough. Hand-wringing and soul-searching is needed, but it is insufficient. What's needed now is action.
The hurt is deep. The scars are wide in Newtown, but they are made wider by the fact that this body in 4.5 years has done absolutely nothing to reduce the likelihood of another mass shooting. And indeed, because we have done nothing, the mass shootings continue.
Former President Obama frequently used mass shootings to illustrate the need for stricter gun control laws, fighting to change them throughout his presidency, but coming up against a brick wall in Congress. This time, in the aftermath of the most deadly shooting in recent US history, the White House stated it was not the time to discuss policy changes, but that a conversation would have to be had. Republicans are fiercely protected of their rights to bear arms, found in the Second Amendment to the US Constitution. Trump himself vowed to protect this during his election campaign. Many who want stricter gun laws have often condemned the kind of weapons out there, fully automatic assault rifles, often described as weapons of war, easily accessible and easy to use.
A fully automatic rifle is manufactured as a weapon of war. It's a military-type weapon. You don't need any real skill to fire a fully automatic rifle.
Las Vegas lies in the state of Nevada, which has some of the most relaxed gun laws in the US. Firearm owners there don't need to get licenses or register their guns.
They're going to say...
Okay, I'll tell you the perils of trying to do a TV show when you're getting over a head cold. I had to take some time to cough, so pardon me on kind of changing the tone here. I wanted to say before I showed you that video that after I came home from Iraq, my parents lived in Vegas, and I've been to Vegas a handful of times since then, and I'll tell you, as somebody who does have military training, I see opportunities to do something like that all the time, and I have for the last 13 years since I've been home. You never want to actually see things like that happening here in American soil. We've had mass shootings before. This is no different than any of the others. It's more sensationalized because the casualty rate is greater. But Sandy Hook, by the way, in my sports writing, it was my editor's niece died in Sandy Hook. So that one is extremely personal to him. But you have Sandy Hook, you had the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, you have Las Vegas now. This is more commonplace, and I think if there's anything that we can take away from any of these situations is more situational awareness. That's kind of what I'm leading at, that it does not surprise me to see this. I'll tell you one thing that really kind of got to me in Las Vegas. This is actually before I deployed. It was back in it was 20 years ago. It was 1997. 97, 98. My dad and I were in Vegas. It was New Year's Eve, and whatever year it was that they imploded the Hacienda Hotel and Casino, well, that was when we were there. And we had walked down the strip, and then we got over to the over by the Flamingo, and we saw that the Doobie Brothers were warming up. Well, we thought they were warming up, and so we stood there in the front row to watch. Just a few people milling around. Well, more and more people during that set, came in our adjoining space, and then from there, next thing you know, Sinbad comes out, the comedian entertainer. Well, that was actually in the East Coast. Their Times Square in New York, they were doing a Las Vegas preview. So when it was getting to midnight in New York, it was actually like 9 o'clock in Vegas. And we were there in the front row for this special. 500,000 people lined up behind us. Over 500,000 people. Dad and I were on row number 1. The only thing between us and the stage was the metal gate. That was it. And when we heard the crowd behind us, when the two of us looked behind and knew where we were, we just kind of hastily made our exit, and we went over to the Hard Rock Cafe and listened to Santana for the rest of the evening. But that's how it is in Las Vegas. I mean, the big crowds. And to have something like this happen on New Year's wouldn't have been unheard of. So I think situational awareness should be the first thing to dictate. Now, as we played in that video, the politicians want to reopen the gun control debate. Happens all the time. Every time there's any type of thing that the media will get a hold of, and I say the media, the bigger daily newspapers and the daily TV shows, they'll come out and make a statement that we need more gun control. Now, if you've got, was it 57 people who died and about 500 injured? How many laws did Stephen Paddock violate just for the very nature of what he did? Even if he would have lived, how many laws did he already violate? How many laws about tampering with fire escapes, hotel vandalism laws? I mean, he violated a whole bunch of laws to do what he did. Adding more laws on the books is not going to change the outcome in Las Vegas. It would not prevented Stephen Paddock from doing what he did. Yet the politicians have to get their nose into it, and instead of actually trying to bring back good character, they have to go back and reopen the gun control debate. So, with that being said, there's what's going on in Washington right now. And now bump stocks, because this person happened to have used a bump stock which may allow a semi-automatic rifle to actually fire faster, not necessarily full auto. Now we have to ban a bump stock. Do you know that if you go on YouTube, you can actually look how to do the same thing without even using a bump stock? It's not gonna solve the problem. The politicians want to make themselves feel like they're doing something, but what they're doing is not solving the problem. It's time to start solving the problem. It was Obama that authorized it. And it was actually President Obama who authorized the use of bump stocks. Go figure that. So now, what does House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi have to say in the light of Las Vegas about guns?
They're going to say if you give them bump stock, it's going to be a slippery slope. I certainly hope so. But I don't think bump stock should be a substitute for the background check. And by the way, the background check is a compromise. There are many more things members want to do, and we're saying, how do we save the most lives? We save the most lives with the background check. So we just have to have that fight. But the American people have to weigh in, as they did to fight the monstrosities of health care bills that the Republicans were proposing. But let's just take this to a little bit of a different place, whether we're talking about guns or we're talking about immigration with DACA and the rest. Let's try to come together, as we asked the Speaker to put a select committee, 60-day, short term, to find our common ground. Are they just saying absolutely not? The stranglehold that the National Rifle Association has on Congress is such that we cannot even consider anything? I certainly hope not.
You know, if you look...
So that's what Nancy Pelosi had to say. First of all, there's already background checks. There's plenty of background checks out there. Now, if Stephen Paddock passed a background check, we got a different issue here. We have a different issue if Stephen Paddock passed a background check. Plus, Stephen Paddock also had a lot of money. He had a lot of money. That's admitted. His brother admitted it. Of course, there's a bunch of other stuff that his brother admits that we're not even going to touch today. We might cover that next week. So the thing is, if you've got money, you can skirt the law. There's plenty of ways of doing that if you've got millions of dollars in which to do. Apparently, Stephen Paddock did. Exactly why he did what he did, nobody knows yet. I know that ISIS took credit for it. Could he have been radicalized? Yeah, he could have been. Probably not. Could he have been mentally ill? Possibly. There's just a lot we don't know. So I think it's already premature for guys like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi to come out and say, oh, we need to make another gun control push, because it's not going to solve the problem. Now, speaking of gun control, let's talk about the Democrats and guns. Guns for me, but not for thee.
You know, if you listen to the Democrats, guns serve no purpose in self.
Okay, I wasn't quite ready to go there yet. But your Democrats in Congress are already protected. Your Republicans in Congress are protected too. I mean, Steve Scalise, I mean, case in point. I mean, he was not protected. Leadership may be protected. As a matter of fact, with Steve Scalise, the member of Congress, shot at the congressional baseball practice, I mean, it was only because there was people there for leadership. I believe it was Scalise himself who had leadership. That's the reason why they were there. But for the average members, not necessarily. But now, when they're in the Capitol building, how much security is there to protect members of Congress? How much? Including Democrats. It's a lot. Let's take a look.
You know, if you listen to the Democrats, guns serve no purpose in self-defense.
I really don't personally think anyone should have a gun.
So I figured while they're working on the gun control legislation in the Senate, I might go down there and see if they have any guns protecting them. I walked around the entire Capitol and counted every single person I could find with a gun. Guess how many I found? Believe it or not, they seem to be pretty interested in having guns around them.
That's a fairly decent sized number for outside of the Capitol. That doesn't even include what's on the inside. So members of Congress, they're protected. And how often do we see the Hollywood elite having their personal protective details? So it's okay if they have guns, and they have people who protect them who have guns, but it's not okay for you, because guys like Stephen Paddock may actually do something ill-intended. That's Democrat logic for you. I want to take a moment here to actually read something that a Democrat acquaintance of mine had posted on Facebook, not the same one I mentioned earlier. This is what she wrote. NRA lobbyists and members and the politicians bought with your money. How can you live with yourselves? Wake up to your basic humanity. This blood's 100% on your hands. America's heartbroken again. America's heartbroken again. Your twisted logic will say this somehow proves that more access to guns is needed. Please take a moment to reflect on reality here, and please wake up your basic decency. That's what this person wrote. They got some valid points there. But the same person also is pro-choice when it comes to the abortion debate. Now, I'm going to read something from a few years ago that was posted in the Washington Post. This is written by Patrick McGinn from California, Maryland. Bob Tripp of Reston asked why this imbalance of coverage when the Post coverage of the March on Washington for Gun Control appeared below the fold on the January 27th Metro section cover a day after the anti-abortion rally topped the front page with a large color photo. Perhaps it was because of the imbalance between the number of firearms-related deaths and abortions performed each year in the United States. There are approximately 0.0001 deaths per firearm and 0.0127 abortions per child-bearing womb each year. So do we need gun control in this country or womb control? Again, this is written by Patrick McGinn from California, Maryland. Now, let's take a look at what the Centers for Disease Control has to state. For mortality, number of deaths, 199,752 deaths per 100,000 population, 62.6. That's all injury deaths. Number of poisoning deaths, 51,966 deaths per 100,000 population is 16.3. Motor vehicle traffic deaths, 33,736 deaths per 100,000 population, 10.6. All firearm deaths, number of deaths, 33,594. Deaths per 100,000 population, 10.5. So of those four categories, injury, poisoning, motor vehicle traffic deaths, and firearm deaths, according to the Centers of Disease Control, firearm deaths rate the lowest with 10.5 people per 100,000 population. Now, let's take a look at abortion. In 2013, and again, this is the Centers for Disease Control, 2013, 644,435 legal-induced abortions were reported to CDC from 49 reporting areas. The abortion rate for 2013 was 12.5 abortions per 1,000 women aged 15 to 44 years, and the abortion ratio was 200 abortions per 1,000 live births. Wow. So the abortion rate for 2000, and by the way, these are both 2013 years on the statistics. The abortion rate for 2013 was 12.5 abortions per 1,000 women, and the total of firearm deaths were 10.5 per 100,000 population. So now, using that same argument, should we not, if we want to reduce deaths, should we not be chastising Planned Parenthood and the other big abortion lobby? Just the way the left derides the National Rifle Association? I think so. I think there's a lot of validity here. And again, the NRA lobbyists and members and the politicians bought with your money. How can you live with yourselves? And for Planned Parenthood and for the politicians who have received their money, how can you live with yourselves when we have 12.5 people per 1,000 women dying from abortion? And they want to talk about gun control. There are millions of people dying because of abortion. A lot more than guns. Now, again, that's not to say that people like Stephen Paddock are I'm not praising him. Don't take that at all. I'm not praising Paddock. I have to say I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad we don't have to go through a trial. I don't want to see a mass shooting on anybody. But here the politicians are coming out and making this to be a bigger issue than it actually is, when there is a bigger issue they're not even addressing. That is what my point is. So now let's go back to the gun discussion, and here is a section with John Lott who discusses gun laws and ownership.
U.S. President Donald Trump has praised the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for its response to the shooting. He spoke briefly to the press in Washington.
It's in many ways a miracle. The police department has done such an incredible job. And we'll be talking about gun laws as time goes by. But I do have to say, how quickly the police department was able to get in was really very much of a miracle. They've done an amazing job. Go ahead, John. He was a sick man, a demented man, a lot of problems, I guess, and we're looking into him very, very seriously, but we're dealing with a very, very sick individual. Thank you.
Well, John Lott is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and joins me now from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us, John. Tell us, why is it that despite all these mass shootings, Aurora, Newtown, Sandy Hook, Orlando, Las Vegas, support for gun ownership in the U.S. still continues?
Well, because there are two questions. One is, will these types of gun control laws that are being pushed, often within hours before we even know what happened, would actually stop these types of attacks? And two, do a lot of these gun control laws that we have actually contribute to these problems? One thing that you see in virtually all the mass public shootings in the United States is that criminals or these terrorist types go and pick areas where they know victims can't defend themselves, so-called gun-free zones. I mean, I understand the reason why people go and create these areas where guns are banned, but you find from their diaries or other statements that these killers leave that they purposely pick those areas where victims can't defend themselves because they know it's easier for them to go and kill them. And the other reason is simply looking across the world. I mean, Europe has had, or either during the Obama administration or since 1970, has had more casualties from mass public shootings per capita than the United States has had. And yet you have France,
but isn't it the case that in states where gun control is more stringent, there is less gun crime?
No. If you look before and after states pass laws, the ones that have stricter gun control laws, the ones that make it more difficult, particularly for poor people who live in high-crime urban areas, to be able to go and defend themselves, actually see increases. You see this around the world. I'll give you a simple example. Every single country that's tried to ban either all guns or all handguns has seen an increase in murder rates afterwards. You can't point to one country where they've banned all guns or all handguns and seen a drop in murder rates. You think out of randomness, you'd have one.
Well, in the UK, we had
handguns
that were banned. In the UK, handguns were banned, and there has been a drop in handgun murder.
In January '97, they banned handguns, and over the next 8 years, the homicide rate went up 50%. It was only after they increased the number of police in the country by 18%, which is a massive increase, that the murder rate went back down to about what it was prior to the ban. But before you had that huge increase in the number of police, you had a 50% increase in the number of in the homicide rate in the country.
But can I ask you this? I mean, just as a straightforward question, statistics aside, isn't it the case that in the U.S. gun control is the way it is because of vested interests, because of the powerful gun lobby?
Well, if that was the case, then we should have a lot of gun control, because Michael Bloomberg is massively outspending the NRA. You look at campaign donations over the 2 last federal elections. Michael Bloomberg, who's a big gun control advocate, has donated over $48.5 million to federal candidates. At the same time, the NRA, which is the big one on the other side, has donated $2.1 million. And the gap is even bigger when you're talking about state legislative races. Bloomberg will go into a state Senate race and spend $1 million or $2 million just in one little state Senate race. The NRA, there's no way they could do that. Bloomberg he had 2 initiatives on the ballot last year to push gun control. He lost effectively in both. And he outspent his opponents by 10 or 6 to 1 in both of those cases. And yet despite massively outspending the people who are in favor of self-defense. He still lost those things.
John, thank you very much indeed for that. Good to speak with you. John Lott there in Washington.
And there you have it. We're going to continue to rehash the same old stale debate when really we got a much deeper problem in this country, and that goes back to the character issue. And perhaps we might even start addressing some of that next week. But we are going to leave you with a little different musical selection today. We're going to leave you with a popular song called Uptown Funk. Bruno Mars is the one who made it popular, but there's a little different twist to this one. And for Dallas Pearson, producer, I'm the host, Jeff Williams. You're watching North Star Oasis. Reminding you, there's 73 more shopping days left until Christmas. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah.